Alright, in most of the mainstream gachas nowadays, you're always given something to shoot for in terms of account progression. This is usually considered endgame content that gives you a bunch of enemies to defeat with ever-increasing health pools as you go to higher and higher difficulty stages with a timer on top of that to make it even more, difficult. In Genshin, which was the originator of this newer system, this endgame content would be the Abyss, Imaginarium Theater, and more recently Stygian Onslaught. In HSR, it'd be stuff like Memory of Chaos and Pure Fiction, and even some of the newer games that haven't released yet, like NTE, have the exact same thing with their version of Genshin's Abyss.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Basically, you're slapped in an arena, you're given a time limit, and if you don't have the damage or the characters that are necessary to clear, well, that sucks for you. Better luck next time, or better luck after you get whatever characters you need for that content. For the most part, this isn't actually content that people enjoy. Like, it takes a special kind of person to be excited to jump into HSR's MOC and slam their head into a multi-million HP enemy. But, regardless of which game you're playing, they offer rolling currency as an incentive for players to actually do it. So, while people might not want to do it, they usually still end up doing it for that currency. Wuthering Waves isn't immune to this either, because it actually has the same kind of content too. Their Tower of Abyss is basically directly ripped off of Genshin's Abyss for better or for worse, and Whimpering Waste is essentially their version of HSR's Pure Fiction with significantly more waves of enemies to defeat than their tower modes have. Recently though, WUWA has been doing something a little bit different, and I think it's absolutely worth talking about because it's actually breaking the mold of this cookie-cutter gacha formula for Endgame that we've had ever since Genshin released. They actually released two modes that are currently just running as events, one of which is called Virtual Crisis and the other is called Banners Never Fall. I would definitely consider Virtual Crisis to be more of an endgame event than the other, but they both have massive potential for changing the game of how we all play endgame and gachas like this. In short, both of these modes offer unique things that iterate on different core aspects of gameplay, and more importantly, they both offer a means for the player to decide how they want to interact with each of the different game modes. And I want you to remember that point, because I'll come back to it later. Let's first dive into talking about Virtual Crisis. This is a game mode that essentially acts as a boss rush, where there's 4 different bosses you can fight, and all of them are slightly different from their overworld versions with new movesets and new mechanics. Before you fight them though, you need to unlock a few things. There's actually 8 stages to clear prior to fighting those bosses, and you need to clear all of them because they give you things to change the difficulty of the boss fights. See, this is an event where it's not actually designed in a way where you need to beat the bosses under a certain amount of time, and realistically, you don't need to have specific units just to beat a stage. This event is actually designed in a way where you can clear it with anyone in as much time as you want at any difficulty level that you choose. And I want to reiterate that, at any difficulty level that you choose. Those things you were unlocking earlier, those are difficulty modifiers, but they're also modifiers that you don't have to add onto the different boss stages if you don't want to. With nothing added, I mean, it's basically an overworld fight that you'll be able to clear very quickly. But depending on what you choose, you could be adding more HP to the boss, you could be lowering your own stats, you could be changing how mechanics of the fights work so that different parts of it are more important than others, and you could even add new mechanics to the bosses on top of what they have in their base fights. This makes each and every fight unique to the player that's doing it, at least assuming they're not going for the max score, and even better, it makes it accessible to almost everyone. Right, like, if you're a new player and you want to take on the bosses with your underleveled characters, then there's nothing wrong with doing that. You can just take not as many modifiers as an endgame player would. And if you want to push into those higher difficulty levels with more modifiers as a new player anyway, well, they give you trial characters that you can use that will help you do it. On the other hand, maybe you've got a developed account, but you're not a sweaty gamer that wants to clear the extremely difficult stuff. Well, in your case, you only have to take some of the modifiers. And for those sweaty gamers, you can take all of them, and the game actually gives you props for doing so through giving you a cosmetic title that tracks your total score in the event. On top of this, to get all the rewards from the event, you don't actually have to clear the full thing. If you're someone that's not aiming to be sweaty and go for max difficulty, there's daily challenges that you can do that will give you currency you need to purchase things in the shop, and as long as you do them, you'll easily be able to fully clear it out, especially with the trial characters that they give you. All of this is actually so awesome because it puts the power in the player's hand to decide how they want to go at each thing. Like I said, everyone that isn't going for max score will end up with a completely different fight than another person because they get to choose how difficult the fight will actually be. But with that said, while the event is accessible, the true goal of the event is to clear it at the highest difficulty you can. Like, this is meant to be truly difficult content, and it's essentially just bragging rights if you can do it. And personally, I think that's a great way to do endgame content. You can keep the base rewards accessible to everyone, but you give the players that want more the opportunity to play more. This event is actually one that's taken from another gacha game called Arknights, and in that game they used to run something called Contingency Contract. It worked in the exact same way. You take different difficulty modifiers that will change how the stage plays, and after a certain level of difficulty it's no longer about the rewards and more so just about, well, can you clear it? For me personally, back when I played Arknights, I was someone that always chased after the highest difficulty levels possible in Contingency Contract because it gave me an avenue to express skill and more importantly gave me something to really strive for as a means to gauge my account's progression. Like, not everyone is going to be able to clear content like this, but personally, I think that's fine. Content doesn't have to be clearable by everyone to still be meaningful for the people that can. With that said, I do have to say that it's not without faults though. Unlike Arknights, which is a tower defense game, WUA is a real-time action game where knowing what's actually going on your screen is extremely important. In this mode though, there are definitely times where visual clarity can be a complete mess. I mean, look at this, can you actually tell me what's going on here? Alongside that, while the difficulty modifiers are great, I do think WUA needs to be more careful with them so that they're challenging, but not annoying or super restrictive. For example, I would consider an annoying modifier this one from the Fleur de Lis fight where she gains a massive shield once you hit low HP. It effectively acts as another health bar that you have to chunk through, which isn't the most fun thing to deal with.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck?
I would consider a restrictive modifier to be the one that lowers your total stamina. Some characters, for example Camellia, have an upfront stamina cost to use some of their abilities. If you combo that with the fact that you have less overall stamina, it makes it extremely difficult to actually play her compared to the other options you may have. And that's including the other options that might even be going up against resistance, for example using Cartethia against the monkey boss. Despite those minor grievances, I do really wish gacha games had more content just like this so that players are not only given more agency in how they handle difficult content, but also just as a means to actually have truly difficult content in the game that isn't actually necessary to clear for the casual player. Currently, this event is only ran twice in WUA, but personally, I think this would be a banger at Endgame, and I really do hope that Kuro continues to iterate on how this event works going forward and doesn't leave it by the wayside. Now, let's talk about the other event that's been running this patch, Banners Never Fall. As I mentioned earlier, this one definitely feels less like Endgame than Virtual Crisis does, but I still think it's worth talking about as a means to discuss what Endgame could be. In short, this mode involves you roaming around the city of Septimon in-game, fighting groups of enemies in different zones that each control a banner. After defeating the enemies and claiming the banner for yourself, you gain buffs to use as you move on to the next one, meaning you get progressively stronger as you claim more zones. For example, at the start, your ultimate ability might only be doing 100,000 damage, whereas by the end, it could be doing upwards of 1,000,000, if not more than that. On paper, this is just a fun mode that iterates on the exploration aspect of the game, right? Like you're taking back a city as you explore it and you come across different banners, and while doing so, you get a bit of a power fantasy as you progress and become stronger. But my thought is, why does it have to be just that? Like, I don't think this would fit cleanly into the game as a recurring endgame mode, but I do think it has potential to be something really special if it was iterated on beyond the base it has now. For example, if you want to keep the event the exact same in terms of gameplay, you could make it not necessarily timed in the way that the Tower of the Abyss is, where you need to clear within a certain time frame, but more like a time trial where you start from zero and you try to clear as fast as possible with your final time ending up on some kind of leaderboard. In the same way that the Virtual Crisis event is extremely accessible, this could be too. The casual players will just enjoy the power fantasy bit and the exploration that comes with it, whereas the sweaty players will be going super hard and trying to speedrun as quickly as they can. To take it a step further, each zone could be marked out with different buffs. Like in one region, you could get fusion buffs, which makes that a priority for you to take out if you're running that kind of team. And again, similar to the Virtual Crisis event, this would make each and every player's run different, because the path that you would take entirely depends on the units that you as the player would want to use. Taking it even further, the mode could be opened up to other regions. For example, what if we had this same mode but it happens back in Huanglong? This could open up the mode to be seasonal rather than on a set schedule like the current Tower or WIWA is. Each of the different seasons could be in a new region, like the first one is in Septimont, but then we go to Huanglong, then Raguna, then the Black Shores, and so on. There could also be new buffs with each season that may incentivize players to use different units, and the monsters you fight could also be themed after the region you're playing in. On top of that, what if the mode was playable in co-op, whether through matchmaking or with your friends? This could open up the game mode to be something truly different, because in most of the mainstream gachas, there's not really a whole lot you can actually do with your friends, and this absolutely has the potential to be a great fit for that. Like, you could go into one region claiming the fusion buffs, but your friend could go into the Spectra region and your third could roam around and help both sides, and then you meet up to fight all the different bosses as you progress through the different zones and claim all the banners. Basically, what I'm trying to get across here is that this is a mode unlike what I've personally seen in any other gacha, but it's also a mode that I had a ton of fun with and see a lot of potential for. There are so many different avenues that they could take this gameplay down, even if it isn't as an endgame mode, and I really do hope that going forward this is brought back in the future so that we can experience it again, and hopefully in a different way. All in all, I have to say I was actually extremely impressed with both of these events in WUWA, and I see all the potential I've been talking about with these modes because quite frankly, I am sick and tired of the cookie cutter gacha endgame that's become the norm since Genshin popularized it with the Abyss. This style of endgame is 5 years out of date at this point, and any chance for it to change or just to get variance in gameplay is one that I will definitely jump into and support in any way I can, because these different game modes that WUWA released are really something different. Like, yeah, they might be rough around the edges right now, but if they were iterated on, they could really end up being something special. The amount of agency given to the player in these modes, whether that's through personalizing your difficulty in Virtual Crisis, or even something simpler like choosing a different path than another player would in Banners Never Fall, is actually so awesome to see because it's not something that we've seen in other mainstream gachas as their form of endgame. Wuthering Waves genuinely struck gold here. They have the opportunity to be a game changer for the gacha space by iterating on these types of gameplay systems rather than falling in line and following the basic status quo that every other gacha seems to be doing with their endgames. Like, it is about damn time that we move away from the old and archaic tower systems we have now and we start moving towards something that's new and fresh. What WUWA has here is essentially unexplored territory that they can do so many different things with. It'll really all come down to the execution and whether or not they continue to run these modes, and I truly do hope that they take this gold they found and mold it into something great. If there's any gacha company out there that can make something out of all this, I would definitely expect Kuro to be the ones to take that chance over most of the other ones, so here's to hoping they can be the change we need in the gacha space. Alongside that, hopefully going forward, gachas including all the ones I talked about in this video move away from the current mainstream style of endgame and take inspiration from these WUWA modes. But as I mentioned, even newer ones like NTE are already following the garbage cookie cutter formula, so here's to hoping for an Anta and Arknight's Enfield, I guess. Anyway, that's all my thoughts, and I appreciate you listening if you made it this far, considering this is my first standalone video on Wuthering Waves. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these events if you played them yourself, so feel free to leave a comment down below or join my Discord link down in the description to talk with me about it. As always, thank you so much for watching, subscribe, and if you haven't already, maybe give my other videos a shot too.